right, so I just want to prepare some of you that the splash zone is empty. And so if you don't get to take home any winnings or treasures, it's not my fault. Just for you over there. But in here, if you like to share, you can also help distribute if at any point that comes appropriate. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Westbrook Johnson, and I'm very excited to be here and sharing with you at my second Codegarden. Hopefully, some of you are either at your second Codegarden as well, or your 10th or your 19th, maybe for some people. I'm getting some weird faces from some HQers, so maybe not quite yet. I am a front-end developer. Are there any other front-end developers in the crowd? Okay, not quite as many as I would have expected, but it isn't a problem because hopefully by the end of the conversation today, those will not be the only ones. And I hear that that is likely a skill you might be interested in using soon, thanks to some changes to a back office or something. So, one of the questions that is most important when talking about front-end development is, what is a front-end developer? And the answer to this may have been why some of you did not raise your hand. And so we can talk a little bit about this today, and maybe that will help you understand yourself, maybe it will help you understand the work you do, or possibly the people that you work with. So a front-end developer works with HTML and CSS, maybe, and JavaScript. These are the lingua franca of the web, and it is just the beginning of what a front-end developer does. We also work in accessibility and interactivity and components and mobile and testing and so many things that I couldn't quite capture it all on one slide. Many of these things are not even technical contexts. We make up our own non-coding languages just to talk to each other about some of the work that we do. Here you see the usage of that for accessibility, I11Y, or internationalization, I18N, or localization, L10N. But then we break the whole building down and we say end-to-end testing as E2E testing, or the World Wide Web Consortium as W3C. There's two W's missing. But that's just to say that there is a lot that goes on when you're a front-end developer. And whether you're early in a project, or late in a project, or somewhere in the middle of the project, all of the things that you have to think about as a front-end developer might start you thinking that this is happening to you. I don't know if this is playing on your screen. No. Now, I don't know what your screen is having. I saw the last presentation have the similar issues, and I don't know whether you're seeing what I'm seeing. We're at black screen now. But which black screen? How might I get this airplane to play for me? Is that a thing that I can do? We're trying? Oh, it's quite angry. Well, this is a perfect analogy for the video that I was about to play, wherein, as a front-end developer, it might often feel like you are flying through the air trying to build a yet-to-be-completed airplane. And you might want to try to find your way, oh my gosh, out of the project. Oh no, that one is open. This one is lost. This one is also lost. Welcome to front-end development, everyone. I hope you like it here. And then we'll also not see this very dramatic video of you flying into the air because you want to escape what it's like to have all of these things going on at the same time, all of these responsibilities that you have to take on at the same time, and slowly have a beautiful, comfortable parachute reach out above you and take you into the breeze where you can float gently and peacefully down to the ground where things are either playing as they're supposed to be or not falling off of tables like they're not supposed to be. And, hold this here for later. You might want to ask the question, where is the eject button on this thing? And what's great about being a front-end developer is the web platform offers us a large number of eject buttons. And if you look for them and you learn about them, it's a pretty good idea for you to think about how you might also, as a software developer, provide eject buttons for your consumers, whether they're developers that develop for users, or they're developers that develop for other developers that are users, or I don't want to think about more stacks than that. But to learn a little bit about how that works, let's be front-end developers together, so that the next time that someone calls out, is there a front-end developer on the plane? We can have more than the hands that we saw at the beginning of our conversation rush into the air, ready to save the day. So, to do that, let's start with a hopefully less dramatic front-end development project. Here we have a little bit of content that we'd like to turn into a website. Maybe it's over here, but it's not over there, and now it is everywhere. Yes? Okay, good. Now, in proper, why should I take time to read this email if you didn't take time to write this email context? I had Copilot generate this content. It talks in Danish, as one does, about developing a website with HTML and CSS and JavaScript. And we, as front-end developers, are tasked with the idea of bringing it to the web. It's really nice, straightforward content, and a perfect example of how you would use HTML, that did it, to bring content to your users. Some nice list items and paragraphs and headlines and strong and code and what have you, the HTML language, everyone. And by default, the web platform makes this look pretty nice, especially if you're a college professor from 1994. And I saw many, if not all of you, on Tuesday, where we were all something from the 90s. And so hopefully you enjoy this delivery of the content. And as front-end developers, we are asked a question: ship or eject? What do y'all think? Are we ready? Are we ready to ship this content? Is it done? Does it look great? No, I have no nice product owners in the crowd. Well, you're right. Maybe you're just pre-learning the rhetorical answer to the rhetorical question that I might rhetorically be returning to on a regular basis in this conversation. But yes, let's eject, and we will visit again our HTML and realize that, or we will soon visit again. I assume you're still seeing ship and eject because I see it here. It's not here. We will revisit our HTML and realize that the web platform offers us CSS. I'll see that? Now it's happy. And with CSS, we can use a meta tag like we see here, link, rel style sheet, to include some styles into our page. And while this is not specifically a CSS talk, once we've done so, our wonderful website for professors in 1994 might look exactly like a professor from 1894 would hope for that website to look like. I apologize for any of you that didn't raise your hand because your title is designer. We can talk later. Nice work, everyone. As front-end developers, we're really making progress. Our very design-centric website is about ready to ship. Everyone is happy until our client is so happy that they want to increase our content by 300%. This is a video that will not play, but I guarantee you that this is showing a large amount of content on the page. So much so that your user now has to scroll for at least 300% more than they were scrolling before to be able to see all that content. And we're now invited to the question, again, of ship or eject. The content is accessible. The content now looks as beautiful as it ever will look. And we could definitely go to market with this. Who thinks we're ready to go to market?
That's MVP now.
I'm so sorry?
That's MVP now.
It's MVP. I like to see some product owners. Let's talk later about working together. Yes. But let's look at what it looks like to eject. I got one to the audience. Here we have another feature of HTML, and that's anchor links. And so were we to have seen all the content that was on the beautiful video that was available in the previous slides, you would see that this links us now between the home part of our page, the HTML part of our page, and CSS and JavaScript. And we're about to not see another video wherein, I lasered people. I got told not to do that. Wherein these links, in association with the CSS property for scroll behavior smooth, now provides a really nice, beautiful transition between one section and the next, so that our users can easily find their way between the different sections, as well as their way back to the host section, and way to go us. We are really making progress as front-end developers. Who believes we're ready for a raise? CTO says yes. Attendees say yes. It's time for a raise. Way to go us. Except, now there are images. Oh my. And they're beautiful images. They're so beautiful images that, much like our content, I visited on the latest and greatest generative AI to bring these to you. And it featuring, as software from Adobe does, the Content Authority Initiative, there's a lot of extra metadata in these images. And this conversation being about how we need to have escape hatches, there is no way to change that context. And these images each are 2.7 megabytes, all on the same page. So what that is going to do to our performance, oh wait, that's right, I forgot to include in performance on the slide we saw previously of all of the responsibilities of a front-end developer. What that's going to do to our performance, which is currently amazeballs, animated confetti, 100s across the board, is going to be dark, night, scary, dropping in our performance down to 76. I'm actually surprised, because for 8.1 megabytes of images, I would have expected a much lower score. But if you take a closer look at performance, you'll realize that that's only 1 point for largest contentful paint. If you take a look at the calculator for Lighthouse scores, you can't get a 0. So this is the lowest score that you can get. So maybe you know the answer already, but we're back to our question, ship or eject. And I appreciate that you're playing along, and in celebration of that, here's your escape hatch. The web platform gives us the loading attribute on images and iframes, and when you set that attribute to the value of lazy, it will prevent requesting the data for that content until the element in question is intersecting with the viewport of the browser. Because that data is going to be coming in late, it's important that you include the width and the height attribute on these images for values intrinsic to the final delivery of that content, such that you don't get shift. Because with no image, an image tag is closed. And you don't want that to happen. But we've added those, and we've added our lazy loading attributes, and now now we're back to 100s across the board, and you might have caught this a little bit earlier. That is fast. And this is just the beginning of the sorts of escape hatches and eject buttons and parachutes that the platform gives us. Whether you're talking about deduplicating JavaScript content, or you're talking about lazy loading things other than images and iframes, or you're talking about advanced interaction, or using the popover API to get content on the top layer, or web components APIs, which I think you may have either heard a lot about today, or if you had possibly attended my talks in the past, had heard about on YouTube, to allow you to encapsulate and modularize your functionality and styles, as well as other APIs across the board. There are many escape hashes. And going into the future, there's many more. Whether you're looking at advanced styling or advanced functionality, or making slides change, or styling the select element, there's so many cool things coming along. And one of the best places that I find to find that, I feel like you're ahead of me, is the OpenUI project, which is one of the community groups that works with the W3C. See, this language that we talked about, it's really hard to learn and it's really hard to speak, and hopefully it's not quite so hard to hear. And there's really great things going on there and at other community groups and working groups across that org. Definitely check out some of the things that are going on. But throughout all of that, it really points that the web platform wants you to be able to build like you want to build. And you know, I've recently heard that somewhere else. I'm not sure if you have. And it made me think, maybe you want to attend my Codegarden talk like you want to attend it. And so in the second half of our talk today, let's build most or parts or some of a component together. And I'd like you to choose which one. Should we build a tooltip and talk about some of the functionalities and its eject buttons therein, a menu button, or a dialogue? What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? We've got some dialogues. Oh, we've got a really quiet tooltip over here. Anything else in the back? We got a louder tooltip. So I think we're going to go with tooltip, namely because I have a clicker and not a mouse, and some of my linked interactions in my slides won't work. But I hope you'll learn some really nice things, and if you still want to talk about dialogues, we can talk about those later. So a tooltip, just to make sure that we're on the same page, is content that transiently will appear in relationship to something that your users might interact with. Here we see a button that is labeled notifications and a tooltip that opens up related to it that says provide non-critical information about a button. Really useful information. This example and some of the code that we'll see shortly is adopted, as a front-end developer will do, from a really great GUI challenges project led by Adam Argyle. You can find him on socials as Argyle Inc. He has a lot of really cool components to learn from and a lot of really advanced eject buttons to leverage in your work. But for the context of tooltip, we're going to take a look at the HTML structures for semantics. We're going to look at CSS, some possibilities today, as well as shortcomings around that. We're going to look at some future proposals that will make components like tooltip and many others even easier in the future, and talk about some of the realities for shipping a tooltip in the present. So first, we see here the rough DOM straight out of the example from Adam Argyle, where we have a button that is wrapping some content, including this sort of custom element looking tooltip element. We could say custom element looking because we see the hyphen in the element name there. But I also say looking because I have read ahead and I know that we are not actually registering a custom element in this case. We're using it more as an API for styling. And then that button is related to a label that says notifications. How do we like what we see here? I've got some mms, and I've got some I'm not a front-end developer yet, and I've got some was it Proud Mary's a little late last night? And I think what we really want to look at is that there's some possible accessibility issues within the context of this tooltip. First of all, we'll see that this provide non-critical information about a button, the most amazing tooltip text ever, is not likely to be read by a screen reader right now. This content of an element that is labeled via the for attribute of a label, which is a lot of labels and fors and attributes, actually will disassociate the content within that element from the accessibility tree. So before we saw that notifications was in a label element that used for with an attribute to reference our button. And so that can pull the content inside that button off of the accessibility tree. While it's still sort of there, accessibility trees generally stop at leaf elements. And a button being a leaf element and that button already being labeled by the label element would prevent this non-critical information about a button from being read to those users that require that technology. Similarly, this notification content, being it's delivered as a label element that labels another element, will appear in that accessibility tree twice. First, as the label for the button, and then second, as a label with the label notifications. And so we want to so the question would be, knowing this and knowing all of the things we know about being front-end developers, that we want to serve users and that we want to be accessible and that we want to be amazing, ship this tooltip or eject? Oh, eject. Well, what's great is we have some buttons for that. And they're called the ARIA family of attributes. ARIA attributes. They're super powerful, particularly when we're talking about delivering accessible content. Here, we notice that there is some content out of our accessibility tree, in this case, our tooltip content, but this can also happen with the use of display none or the use of the inert attribute. And this content can be reassociated with other content via the ARIA described by attribute. It's one of the few, and we're going to talk about another one in a minute, attributes that allow you to bring content back into the accessibility tree, which is really cool. And then we can look at how ARIA hidden equals true will take something out of the accessibility tree. And then when you pair that with an ID, you can then reassociate label content via the ARIA labeled by attribute to get a slightly more pleasing accessibility tree. Here, with attributes shortened for brevity, we see that our button of ID BTN is labeled via the ARIA labeled by attribute of an element with ID LBL, and then also described by an element with attribute TTP. This allows our notification text to be in the tree once, and it allows our tooltip text to be in the tree without enhanced interactions being required by our screen reader users. So our tooltip is starting to be accessible, but how does it actually work? Well, this is something that Adam Argyle, and the author of the example we're adopting this code from, is really good at. He's amazing with CSS, and here we see two very cool new eject buttons in CSS. First, we see that right now, you might, for those of you that already are front-end developers, think that we're seeing some Sass or some post-CSS code, but that's not true. Now, all modern browsers support CSS nesting. And that's what we see here with the use of the has and the is selectors inside of our tooltip root. And then, in conjunction with that nesting, we see the has, usage of has, which allows us to say a tooltip that is a child of something, which is an amazing new feature of CSS that really has been incredibly difficult in the past. Here we're seeing that if we're a tooltip that is a child of an element that is currently focused, or focused visibled, or, is currently hovered, or focused visibled, or active, which are the interaction states via which a button should, or other interactive content should be available to accept a label, the tooltip content is going to be displayed. And that hover or focus-based availability is really powerful because not only is it simple, it's baked into the browser. However, it has some shortcomings. It can be defeated by CSS clipping, as well as by CSS layering. And you might ask, as a developing front-end developer, most of the over here crowd, what does that mean? That means, in the case of our button, were we in a container that had overflow hidden, our tooltip content wouldn't be available for all of the non-screen reader users, because accessibility goes both ways. And so, with that in mind, we are back to our question of ship or eject. And while I often let you answer this question is a little bit harder to answer, because CSS clipping and layering is something that you can know about in your content. And if you're shipping a tooltip for your content, and you know that that's not something that's going to happen, we could be ready to ship today. But if you're shipping a tooltip for content that you don't own or know about, it's likely that you might want to... Oh, I love you. Y'all are great. See if I can... Feel free to recirculate, as I mentioned. And that might look something like this. Or at least it will look something like this soon, in that the interest target attribute is something that's currently being discussed in the W3C with browser implementators that would allow, in contexts like focus or contexts like hover, to trigger something that has a popover attribute of hint. Popover attribute of hint, also not yet being supported by browsers, allowing you to have content thrown to the top layer of your browser that automatically closes other content. In this case, we're talking about how you likely would not want two tooltips open at the same time. So one tooltip being able to close the other. And you can check out more about this API, again, at the openui.org website. But it's looking beautiful, and it's really exciting. So exciting that we're going to ask the question again of ship or eject. Oh, y'all are so easy to confuse. This API that we just talked about isn't currently available anywhere. You ship this, and your code is broken. Let's eject. Here we see the small amount of JavaScript that's required today to duplicate the work that you would be able to power with interest target and popover hint in today's browser. Here we see popover used with its default value, and we see ID attributes used to reference this content. And then we say, when we're either pointer entering or focusing, which are the equivalents to what we saw in CSS, we're showing popover on our tooltip to ensure that that content goes onto the top layer, or hiding popover to take it back off the top layer when we're done, allowing us to have great accessibility, escape our CSS clipping and layering, and deliver lovely, beautiful tooltip content for Everyone? Well, what's hard about writing components is there's always more work. And while we could go on and on and on, talking about deduplication or encapsulation or content customization or styling or fallbacks for JavaScript, non-JavaScript environments or internationalization and much, much more, we do have negative minutes left. And so, having talked about so many different contexts already, maybe it's time for us all to eject, which is going to be really hard being I am using this clicker and I can't skip slides the way that this link underneath eject is going to allow us to do. Is there any way to click the eject button on this thing? Wait, can I try? And now we're back to this video that doesn't play of us ejecting from our problems. And there we go. We got to some people. And we're ejecting, and we're ejecting, and we're ejecting, and we're ejecting, and we're ejecting. And so now the question is, who here isn't a front-end developer? Oh, that's far less hands than went up, that didn't go up when we started, and that's what I love to hear. And so I want to thank you all for joining my Thank you all for joining the conversation today, learning about being front-end developers, and seeing the eject buttons available in the front end.